This is the beginning of a video series that will cover my journey with changing my embouchure. So I think it's important that I establish exactly what I personally believe that means, uh, changing the embouchure. So first things first, the embouchure is my understanding everything here that allows you to make sound, hold your aperture and your lips in place and keeps it loose, right? This should be loose. This is tight. Um, and the embouchure is just holding everything in place. Uh, it includes the muscles that hold everything in place, but it's all of that embouchure setup, whatever you want to call it. Um, so that's first, uh, and then there's of course air and how efficient you're using your air. Um, I would say it's about probably like 20% chops, 80% air, from what I've been told and from what I've figured out. Most of it is going to come from how much you support your notes. Um, and this is just, I like to call it like erosion in a way. Like the more you, it really just takes time to refine here. It takes the hours of putting in long tones, uh, doing all the exercises, um, to move yourself in that direction to get a more refined aperture. Um, so yeah, so 80% air, 20% chops. Um, now that's my understanding of the embouchure. So why did I make that change? I made a video on this on my Instagram, but I think it's important to keep revisiting why we make these big decisions in our lives. Um, is it because uh, maybe we want more in life, or maybe we just made a bad decision? Maybe we just like in the heat of the moment decided to do something. In my scenario, I feel like it's the former. Um, like I clearly remember sitting down and thinking a lot about what I wanted in life, what I wanted as a musician, what I felt like was the right way to go. Um, or what I felt like was the right path I wanted to follow. Um, and part of that path was having proper technique and having uh, a more efficient way of playing. It was my understanding that this wouldn't be the first time that I would do something like this, something like changing my setup, um, and changing the way I played, just from like hearing my teachers and hearing other trumpet players, the established trumpet players. Like it's pretty common to go through something like this, uh, but I don't know too many people that have done it in college. That's why this scenario I think is a little bit different, um, and why I think it's probably important to talk about it and to address it. Um, because although it may seem really simple, it's just like, well, before I was doing something weird, like, you know that might be exaggerated, but it was something like that. And now it's more like that. And that's I'm still open to criticism for that. That still might not be the best setup, but it does feel a lot better than it was before. Uh, it does feel a little bit more stable. Now the consistency is still not there, But that might be just attributed to the fact that I need to put a lot more hours into it. Um, so back to why I decided to do it. It was kind of a really painful moment where, uh, and this painful moment was kind of the final straw through many individual difficult moments that I had, uh, in which I wasn't able to express what I needed to express through the instrument or execute what I wanted to execute. Um, and sure, someone might say, well, let's look at your practice. Was your practice as efficient as it could be? Uh, were you overdoing it? Were you underdoing it? Were you doing enough long tones? Were you doing enough of this, and that? Um, we could look into that. I had my routine, and I was working with my teacher and my private teacher for the longest time. And I mean, sure, there were times where it might have been my practice might have been a little inconsistent, but I feel like overall I did do the things that he asked me to do. And I was still running into these problems with slotting certain notes and just feeling comfortable playing. So there would be little moments like I clearly remember being in I think like middle school or something, and I was playing for NJYS, which is the New Jersey Youth Symphony, uh, at Warren Arts Institute. Um, but I remember just completely like my lips just got so thin. There was like one particular performance, it got so thin, and uh, it was just so devastating. And yeah, sure, that was pretty early on in my career, so it could be just attributed to the fact that I was very new um, at the instrument. But I did have this gut feeling that there was something just slightly off. Um, and that would bring me to my first change. Uh, so this is not the first time I've done this, but this is the biggest shift that I've done. Like before, it was simply a matter of moving the mouthpiece up. Like before, it's kind of like here. And so I moved it up on the vermilion. I think that's what they call it, vermilion. And so I moved it up just the slightest bit. I mean, it was still on the red, but I moved it up. Uh, Still kind of there. And that worked for a while. I was able to play lead for my ensembles, for uh, outside programs and in high school programs, in the pre-college program. Uh, and it was okay. Yeah, I would still play very loud and my lips would spread, but I was getting sound out. You know, I was able to play loud and I was able to put some power behind the instrument. But I was still running into the same problems I was running to in middle school, which were slotting notes, endurance, range. And speaking of range, it's also my understanding that, well, at least this is not my understanding. This is just kind of what was has been told to me. I don't know the exact like physicality of it, the exact just what goes behind it. But I was told that range comes to you a little bit later as a trumpet player. I know that happened to my professor particularly. He didn't really access that part of his playing until later on in life, like 20s. Um, but it just kind of felt off. Like if you're doing all these exercises to expand range, then I feel like there has to be some sort of s- solid foundation to build off of that. Now, I always felt like when I would play certain notes or when I would try to slot, even just notes in the staff, it was very inconsistent. Um, like I would pick up the horn and I wouldn't be confident in playing that note. Like I still kind of feel that to a degree, but it's getting a little bit better. I would say it's like 50% of the time when I pick up the horn, I can play it in the staff somewhere. Now, when it gets to like E, F, F on the staff, then it gets a little bit more. Um, but that's a whole different thing. I'll go into the specifics on what my exact setup is right now, but uh, I kind of wanted to talk just touch on for this first video, touch on the reasons why I did this. Um, so there was the endurance, there was the range. I felt like the foundation wasn't strong. I mean, I was getting an okay sound, but uh, I felt like it was going to be hard to build off of that and to be able to have certain job opportunities. Like you can play that certain way, you can have thin lips and you can make a career out of that, and that that might work for somebody. But there are certain like heavy duty things that don't come easy, and it's just kind of really not within reach when you're playing on a setup like that. Um, like for example, like playing musicals or playing lead gigs, things like that are really demanding technically. Um, if that foundation is not solid, then that's not really within the job market. This is also, just keep in mind, this is also all my thoughts on the matter. This is just my opinion, my view on the things. I haven't really done like research and like articles and stuff. I've just kind of been my own patient and practitioner. But there's been results. I've been hypothesizing certain things and then testing it out and then seeing what has happened. So I think there is some validity to uh, this journey, but that's a whole different thing. So foundation, still building off of that foundation uh, right now, but before there was a very shaky foundation, and I couldn't really build much on that. So I got to a point where it was very inconsistent. Sometimes it would work, and when it would work fantastically. Other times it would be the worst thing in the world. Like I could not play any notes. It would just be airball after airball, and it was the most frustrating thing ever. Especially when you're at like the end of a gig or the end of a hit and you're expected to play high notes or you're expected to solo, and you go up and it's just like you know the sound, there's no resonance here. um and it's just straight air and it's super frustrating. uh that it was very 50-50, and my goal is to kind of get at least like 85% consistent. Like right now I think that's within reason with the new setup, or at least just however many setups it takes to get to that point. That would be the goal. um because if I can get to that point, then I think uh I'll be a lot more confident in the foundation and be able to build on that. So those are the kind of the general reasons why I decided to move things. So it was like endurance reasons. Uh, this is a big one. I actually didn't mention this one. So I'll talk about it in a sec. But it was endurance, range, um, just in general, the foundation. So endurance, range, and just foundation to build on. Progress was very little, and it was kind of very sparse. It felt like I like to use the image of a puzzle piece. Like not puzzle piece, it's like a puzzle, and it felt like there was a lot of spots that were missing. And you can kind of see the image, but it's pretty obvious that there's some holes, and I find it best to find a way to actually look at the entire picture, and to do whatever it takes to get to that point. So those are three things, and then I would add probably a fourth one, and this is what I've thought about this a lot. This might be the reason why this embouchure didn't work. Um, which is like it's unfortunate to think about now because it's like I think like what if it wasn't thin lips? What if it was just because I articulated just really badly? Here's how I would articulate. I would conventionally it is ta 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 like ta your tongue right there, the teeth. Most people do it there, teeth, and then the tongue simply moves back a little bit, like so. It's like this. This is your mouth. This is this is your tongue. So this is the mouth. This is the teeth, and this is your tongue. That's the motion. That's what's happening inside. I was doing this. My tongue was here, and it was going like that through my lips. So I'm sure you can imagine what the aperture was doing, spreading really wide. Um, and I mean, it would work for high notes. Like I've heard, like that's an actual technique, uh, to tongue there. Uh, but I was doing it all the time, like all the time. Um, I didn't know how to tongue anywhere else. I mean, double tonguing was like virtually impossible. Like I couldn't do it. Like it's a lot easier to go taka 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 ta as opposed to paka 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 paka. Like it's not. That's not how it's supposed to work. Um, so it's possible that I could attribute it to that. Um, it's possible that the embouchure didn't work because of that, but we're already here, so we're just gonna ride it out. I decided for those four reasons. I was like, all right, I'm just gonna reset, like just start fresh, start from fourth grade level chops, and just like build from there, and try to do it as efficiently as possible, and do it as conventionally as possible. Um, and here's there's a lot of opinions on that because it's like, well, look, everybody's unique and we all have our specific way of playing. I agree. I agree. I think that that's very true. Um, but I do also recognize that there are anomalies, and there's also what has worked for a lot of people. Um, like if I look at a lot of lead players and I look at a lot of really strong players, it's like, yeah, they have really strong chops, but there's a certain way that they put the mouthpiece on the horn, um, that it works, and a lot of people have adopted that and they've come up with methods to emulate that. So I have no doubt that I'll take some of that and then kind of apply my own adjustments. So it's not so much like, oh, I'm just going to do the conventional method straight. That's it. It's not so much that. It's more, I'm going to take things from the conventional method, like um, from what I believe is the proper way of playing. And I'm going to take that. I'm going to take a little bit of that. And then I've kind of adapted different things that make it a lot more personal. Um, like for example, the size of the cavity, the tongue placement, where I'm tonguing, uh, how the air flows, where the arch is. Like there's a lot of really fine tuned things that just take a lot of practice to figure out how that's going to be oriented. So that's kind of what I've changed. I've moved it complete center, dead center, and I've changed the way I'm tonguing. So now I'm doing ta 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 ta. That's how I'm tonguing. Ta 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 ta. And I've been messing around with different size cavities um, to get higher in the pitch. I'm kind of pushing the corners of my tongue against the roof of my mouth. And that's working pretty okay. My range has expanded a lot and it's a lot more consistent. I'm starting to get to like the G above the G. So double G. It's very thin, but someone said this, I don't remember who, today's squeaks are tomorrow's notes. So I'm gonna stick with it and keep working with that little squeak, and maybe it'll become a note soon. So working on that, the tongue position. So tonguing here, ta ta ta, trying to mess around with bringing the tongue down for middle notes, and also just trying to be as efficient as I can. Before I was doing for all of the notes, and that's not as efficient as it could be. It's kind of weird what happens when you do that. I feel like I'm almost using my tongue more than I'm using my corners to hold everything in place and to get the note. So there's a little bit of cheating by using that for all of the pitches. So been messing around with the tonguing, the placement of the corners. That was a big thing. I used to kind of frown a lot. That's what was told to me. That's what I was suggested to do. But since then, I've moved it to just like sides right now. Like this is frown, sides. Some people they go like this, but I found that this works fine. So I just do this. Aside from that, so new embouchure. I'm kind of still doing the same exercises. Just messing around with how much exercise I can do. Right now, I've realized like after a long rehearsal, if I do the same practice routine that I've been doing for 10 years, the next day my chops completely crap out and it's like, ooh, can't do it. Can definitely need to figure out where the limit lies for practicing, and that's something I'm also kind of working on. So those are kind of like the general reasons on why I've changed it and what I've changed. And I'll get into a little bit more detail as far as how that journey has been, because it's been a long journey. It's going on about a year and some change now since I've changed things. So I have a lot of thoughts, and I think I'll go into. I think the next video is probably going to be more so the college experience, music college experience within an embouchure change, because it's difficult. I mean, college is difficult as is, but this has made it a really interesting experience, very rewarding experience, but definitely some things that should be touched on. So I'll discuss that in another segment. But for now, that is why I changed and what I've changed. So thank you, and I'll touch on some other things in another video. See ya.